Hey guys, so this is going to be a little bit quicker tutorial just to kind of run you through the basics on using layers on pretty much any drawing app, but this one specifically is Ibis Paint X. Um, when you start your new project and open layers, you will tap that little camera on the bottom left to import your photo, and you want to make that your bottom layer. And typically I will drop the opacity on it so that when you're drawing your outline you can see it clearly. So once you've imported that photo, you want to make sure you start a new layer, and do not ever draw on the actual photo layer, because as soon as you have to erase something, it's going to actually erase the photo as well. So always make sure you're starting on a new layer. And I went ahead for the sake of time and drew the outline already. Just drawing a little Care Bear just to do something simple. Just little tips and tricks for outline. I notice people, when they're first getting into drawing, a lot of times you see really skinny lines. It definitely, your drawings will look better if you have more dimension. So if you notice, like mine are different sizes throughout. It's not just one same shape all the way through. And the thinner the line you use, actually the shakier it will be. I mean, you don't want to have like super thick outline lines for, if you're drawing a portrait of someone. But, you can do it thinner and thicker throughout. And then also I go through with the eraser and sharpen up, like, for example, like after I would have drawn that line, I would go back in with the eraser and just kind of sharpen it up a bit. And that's just preference. You don't have to do that specifically, but I just think it looks nicer. So once you have completed the outline, you need to start a new layer. You hit that little plus sign, and you want your outline to always be the top layer. So you want to make sure you drag that new layer beneath the outline. Now I would open up my original photo, bring the opacity back up, and once again make sure I'm on the right layer. And then this next layer I always do as just a base color. I don't worry about shading or highlighting or anything on this layer. It's just to lay the foundation for the color. So go ahead and close that out while I do this. So this drawing in particular won't need too many layers just because it is so simple. But let's say I'm doing like a cartoon portrait, I end up with, excuse me, many layers, just because I basically do almost everything on its own layer. And it's really helpful for, if you make mistakes, you don't have to mess up all of your work. You can just fix that one layer. All right, so I'm going to add one more layer and then close the eye on the one I just finished. Open the original back up, and I'm gonna go ahead and start filling in this white area. I went ahead and drew those hearts and teardrops as part of my outline. So now I can just color right on top of them, and it won't matter because it'll just go, everything will go behind it. Turn that one back one so that I can see what I'm doing now. Ibis also has like rulers, including circular, which comes in handy, especially for like eyes and things. Just get that centered. And then to close the roller, you just click on at the top again and then click off. So because all of that is just base color as well, I will merge those two layers, and I'm going to do one more base color for the belly. So I'm going to close that one, and now I can fill this in. I'll just do the same color as the outline. Actually, no, because I really like my lines and I want to keep those defined. So I'll do it just a titch off. Okay, so I will merge that one as well. So now all of the base color is done and the outline is done. So my next step would be shading. So I will add a new layer on top of the base color, and I'm going to close the base color and open the original image back up. And luckily this one is super simple, so won't take too long. I typically especially for outline and like base color, I use Dip Pen Soft. And then up here on the little hand, stabilizer all the way up, and force fade. If I'm just filling in base color, force fade I leave off. But if I'm doing any type of accents or line work, then I always have force fade on. Just gives you that nice tapered line. And so I will have that on for shading. And then sometimes I also will switch to airbrush, which is a good one for shading certain things. But for this one, I'm going to stick with the dip pen. Make sure that's on. Make sure I'm on the right layer. And I already selected my color. I'm going to lower the opacity a little again so that I can see what I'm doing. Make sure you always go back to the right layer. It just really sucks if you do a bunch of work on the wrong layer. So you can follow the shading that's already on the photo that you're drawing, or you can do your own shading. It's up to you if you want to get creative. Definitely, it doesn't really matter too much on this, just a little cartoon character, but when you're drawing portraits and things like that, you definitely want to make sure you're paying attention to the light source and don't just draw random shadows here and there. You want to, imagine that a sun or a lamp is pointing at them from a certain direction. And so you would want to follow that guideline if you want a more natural look or realistic. I'm going to go ahead and pause this while I finish putting the shading on.
Y'all pickaxe me last round.
Okay, so I've gotten all of the shading done. Next, I would add some highlights, which would also be on a whole new layer. But if you close that, you can see without shading, with shading. So add another layer on top of that one and close the base color, open the original again. And I already selected my highlighting color. I will pause again and go ahead and finish the highlights. Okay, so highlighting layer is done. Excuse me. And last thing I would probably do is add some type of background, maybe even some shading under the feet. So I would add a new layer, and I would actually keep this on the very bottom, and I'm going to use the airbrush. And then I would maybe even do like a rainbow or something. And this is still on the bottom layer, so it will technically be the background. close the original and so just leave it at that for now. All right, so basically, also, it's a good idea, especially once you're getting so many layers going, to name your layers so that you can easily keep track, which you can do with those 3 little dots on the bottom right, and you just select rename layer. Like I would do background, base color, shading, highlight, outline, etc.